So we're talking about the foreign direct investment, and we had a brief introduction as to what it is, and I want to actually talk about how the pros and cons. Why is it beneficial? Why sometimes countries don't want it, the host countries don't want it, or what do they get out of it, and all that. So just to have a brief recap of FDI, foreign direct investment, refers to a company or a country investing in another country other than their own for a long-term intent. Meaning, an example, for instance, is when you have Hyundai opening a factory in the US, or Mercedes or BMW, opening a factory or buying another factory in the US, even though they are foreign companies to US. And this is referred to as foreign direct investment. And I have on the screen, you can see OECD data for international foreign direct investment flows. This is the outward flow in $1 million. So, like for instance, when you see this, it says 1,135,215 US dollars. So it's $1.1 trillion. And you can see the red line right here is the European Union, blue line is the OECD, and the purple line is the world. And also you can see the correlation between these investments. And if you think about it, the European Union is actually, drawing significant, paying out significant interest for foreign direct investment. And so, I will actually provide these links in our Canvas for this specific lecture day, but the point really is how beneficial is foreign direct investment, not for specific developing countries, but in general. And then the foreign direct investment, this is the inflow by the World Bank. There's significant interest, as you can see, OECD or IMF or the World Bank. This is an increasingly interesting and important subject in international finance, as it started out with privatizations in 1990s, especially after the USSR split up, and then we have these newly emerging countries in Eastern Europe, and then they are becoming part of the European Union, and then we have these privatizations, especially with the Margaret Thatcher of the United Kingdom. And then all the way to the 2010, we still have significant foreign direct investment, and it simply keeps going up. This shows how integrated the world is becoming, and this is really interesting. So let's talk about what makes this an important topic, right? So from a sorry, let's make this bigger. Why is it important to talk about, or why is international foreign direct investment important? So there are two parts to the story, and I'm going to split our discussions into four parts, and I'll try to limit the time that we talk about. So from one perspective, it is the host country, right? And then we actually have the corporate perspective, or maybe we should just say corporation. So from the host country, why do they want it? And then why don't they want it, right? So the pros and cons. So the same thing from a corporation perspective. Why do they want it? And why don't they want it? Right? So the pros and cons. So today I want to talk about why a host country would like to have international foreign direct investment, right? So the idea behind this is actually very simple. And obviously has different implications for different countries. So for a developed nation like United States, its implications are different than compared to foreign direct investment implications for a developing nation or an underdeveloped nation. But in general, for a host country, when a foreign company wants to invest, let's just say in the US, what is it that the US get out of it? And then we'll talk about, what it would mean for developing nations or developing host countries, and then underdeveloped host countries, right? So immediately comes to mind, obviously, is, and let's talk about, say, from an example perspective, if we have Mercedes or BMW of Germany, doing a foreign direct investment in the US, why is it that the US is happy about this? Why do we want this in the US? Well, number one reason, the FDI brings money. I mean, it's very simple. For the Mercedes or the BMW to invest in the US, they need to simply either buy a factory that's already operating, or they need to build a new one, and that requires capital investment. So capital investment, right? Very simple. And then the second one, again, very obvious. When you have a new corporation, whether a foreign or a domestic, you actually have um, an operating corporation, a new corporation that generates income for your community, for your country. Like, for instance, we are talking about BMW and Mercedes, and when they open up a new factory, this factory creates an income for the community, right? Creation of income for the local community. And this extends a little bit more than just an company or the factory creating income. So let's talk about what it. So when the BMW or a Mercedes factory actually operates, they're going to need several local services. Like, for instance, they're going to need plumbers, they're going to need electricians, they're going to need infrastructure builders, they're going to need contractors. But this is just for the infrastructure, right? But for their operation, they're also going to need a secondary industrial production, right? Like, for instance, they need local companies perhaps to produce windshields for them. They need local companies to produce plastic parts, the paint, the aluminum, the, I don't know, whatever goes into a car. They may not necessarily import all the parts. They may be actually buying them from local producers, which creates income for the local community. And obviously, they will employ people locally, factory workers, accountants, finance people, and everybody that needs to be employed. It's not like they're going to be bringing their own people all the way from Germany. Well, not all of them, but they will be hiring locals. Now, once they start hiring locals, that will actually it will attract attention. Meaning, when a foreign company or even a new US company, for instance, starts a new factory, they're going to start hiring people, perhaps in the thousands. And then as soon as this happens, these people will need housing, they're going to need school, they're going to need new subdivisions to be built, they're going to need new shopping centers, they're going to need new hospitals, fire stations, malls. So all of this creates an economic activity, and it actually creates income. Now, whether this comes from a local company or from a foreign company, from the perspective of the local community, I'm not sure if it actually makes that much of a difference. So, for instance, when Tesla wanted to, build the Gigafactory in Arizona, Arizona was willing to provide the area, the land for free. In fact, some of the infrastructure was built by the state of Arizona for free, and the hope was that through this welcoming um, subsidies, the local community would benefit from this. In fact, one of the parts was the arrangement was that Tesla was going to donate $20 million to the local university for engineering program to advance the electrical battery systems or electrical motor systems, electric vehicles. And that's an example of how these investments create income for the local community, right? So, it's not just the income of, the payrolls or, it's creating jobs, but these actually have a ripple effect. As soon as you start hiring people for a new factory, then, these people have needs and these people will be spending, and all of this will have a ripple effect in the community. And, the factory as itself will also create a demand for the local industry for secondary parts, right? So what else? Well, the FDI could actually build infrastructure, right? Or brings. So again, for the case of Tesla in Arizona, this could be, I mean, if you think about it, the area for the Gigafactory was in the middle of nowhere and had no infrastructure built on it. And this area, or maybe we could just say not just brings, but also builds. But perhaps this will be more relevant for developing countries where infrastructure is desperately needed. And it's very expensive, and the local countries cannot be cannot, perhaps afford it. So the FDI can bring infrastructure, can build infrastructure, and that infrastructure creates other, related businesses, related, living arrangements and civilization, right? So FDI provides this with their own money, with their own funding, and they actually bring this infrastructure usually to places where they can get subsidies, and these subsidies can't usually be provided by areas that are underdeveloped. So FDI brings or builds infrastructure. So the FDI creates, or maybe we should just say pays taxes. So, I mean, it could be sales tax, it could be payroll taxes, but they actually, property taxes, it also increases the property taxes, for instance, for the area. And then just like I said here, when a new factory is built, you hire all these people and they have needs and they're going to create new subdivisions. They're going to create new shopping malls and new hospitals and new all this, like SimCity. And all of a sudden you actually start collecting these taxes, not just from the FDI, but any related hirings or related businesses through the FDI. So FDI pays local taxes, and I also want to say FDI related businesses also increases the local taxes. So, and obviously they pay, maybe we should just not limit it to local, but they also pay state taxes, federal taxes. But what I mean by local is local for the country, right? So BMW, Mercedes pays taxes in the US is what I mean, right? So FDI brings technology. So again, one of the reasons that Arizona wanted to have Tesla in Arizona was that Tesla was in a partnership with Panasonic. Panasonic has the advanced technology in battery building, and especially for cars. And Arizona wanted to have an access to this technology. And the request for Tesla to donate $20 million to the university in Arizona is that attempt to bring that technology and perhaps advance it even further in the U.S. and make U.S. more competitive in that battery building um, you know realm. So FDI also brings technology with respect to production. A lot of the times, these factories, when they have these local needs to purchase parts, they might require these companies to have certain technologies. Like an example, when when Apple wanted to actually advance iPhone uh, to have sapphire screens, sapphire is not an easily produced glass, and therefore not every company can produce it. So they approached a company called GTAT, and they wanted them to produce enough for all the iPhones. Now, this is a big deal, and the GTAT at that time was not available or was not capable of producing such quantity in such short periods of time. So it would create a bottleneck. So, from an Apple perspective, what they did was they actually helped GTAT to build this technology and adopt technology that would increase their volume and their time frame to produce Sapphire old iPhones. And from a GTAT perspective, this is fantastic because now they're getting all this, almost costless money to advance their own production, and they have a certain buyer for the next X number of years. So the dream come true. Except Apple backed away from the plan, and GTAT filed for bankruptcy. So not every plan works perfectly, but that's what I mean. So when BMW and Mercedes wants the local companies to produce parts for them, they might actually bring their own technology, their own machinery, their own designs, and then they require these local companies to adopt these technologies, and therefore, they're basically bringing in new technology. Very similarly for iPhone, to get built in Taiwan or in China, or maybe I shouldn't have said that. In well, the question is Taiwan part of China? And I don't want to get involved in that. But the argument is that if Apple were to get their phones produced in another country, they also bring in their chip designs and their technology to produce. Given that Apple does not do a foreign direct investment, they actually have subcontractors or suppliers that produce for them. And in our discussions about foreign direct investment, where the company actually buys another entity in another country, and therefore ultimately they have to bring their own technology. So, from a gigafactory for Tesla, for instance, Panasonic, by becoming a partner in Tesla or with Tesla in Gigafactory, they bring in their technology to produce, lithium-ion batteries in Arizona, and then therefore they bring their technology. So the people learn this technology. The people who work in the factories, they learn this technology, and then they could literally start competing businesses and then competing production, and it really uplifts the local companies, local production, local technology to compete on an international scale. FDIC educates. Well, like I said, we go from developed nations and to developing nations and underdeveloped nations. But think of it like this: if you want to hire people to work in your factory, you need them to be literate. You need them to have certain level of education, and you need them to be qualified people to work at your factory. So if you cannot find this level of education, then you have to educate them yourself. So this may not be the main example for the US, but for developing or underdeveloped nations, FDI, because they choose to operate in that country for whatever reason, they might actually have to educate their labor force. They might bring numeracy, literacy, and a certain level of actual education as to make him usable or make their workers more effective parts of their production cycle, right? So this education obviously creates a better educated culture. I mean, local community. It provides advancement for the community, and FDI would be paying for this. So, from a country perspective, this is win-win situation as long as the educated is related to what they're doing. So, when we talk about this, obviously this education comes with the cultural impositions and things like that. But for the time being, the FDI educates. So FDI brings in money, they create income. FDI brings or builds infrastructure, pays local taxes, brings in technology. FDI educates. Um, FDI brings competition. So again, this we can argue to the kingdom come. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? But with say Mercedes and BMW producing in the US now, I think there's a significant competition between the local companies and these two, and therefore, what you would expect is your local production to become more competitive and therefore offer more quality, and through that quality, you would expect them to provide, you know, um, more competitiveness internationally. So, Ford becomes more quality, Chrysler becomes more quality, GM becomes more quality, and then internationally they become more competitive. So the local competition at home makes them better to compete internationally, right? And obviously, we're going to talk about that as a negative because sometimes that competition can kill. So, for instance, when Walmart goes into another country, I cannot imagine small mom and pop shops to survive the competition with Walmart. So, not really sure if, like I said, we can discuss this to the kingdom come, but this usually is why the host country would want. Another point is FDI brings international integration. Now, this is really true for obviously for developed nations, but more so for developing and underdeveloped nations. So, like for instance, let's say from the perspective of Turkey, um, up until probably the 1970s, 1980s, Turkey was not as integrated to the international production, international economies as it is today. And I think one of the reasons for this is now that we have significant international investment in Turkey. This makes Turkey part of the international production, international foreign direct investment, international economic activity. So, um, I mean, again, think of it like individual example. When you have BMW and Volkswagen in Tennessee or Mercedes producing in the US, you now have Germany invested in the US. So from an economic perspective, they don't want American economy to collapse. They want American economy to flourish because they have economic interests in the US. Very similarly, when US has these investments in Europe, they want the European economy to flourish because they have economic interests in Europe. And I'm not even talking about political or military. It's just from an economic perspective, when a country has foreign direct investment in another country, they want that economy to flourish because of their own economic interests. So when Russia, for instance, had this military conflict with Ukraine, all these international foreign direct investments paused or got out of Russia, and this was a huge deal. I would have expected that this exodus would have been significantly less, and that I would have expected Russia um, to have more economic concerns and perhaps to reconsider their military actions. However, like I said, I'm just a finance person, so what do I know about politics and military actions? However, from an economic foreign direct investment, international integration perspective, these foreign direct investments in Russia provided Russia with that integration that for the other countries who have investments in Russia, it made them want Russia to be more um, healthy or to have a healthier economy so that their economic interests would further. But the war obviously took a huge setback. Um, so for smaller countries, even from a military and political perspective, attracting these international money and investment, it actually integrates them into the international community. It makes them part of the international economy. It makes them part of that international activity, and through that integration, they can um, survive, and they can create alliances, and they can become parts of international um, you know organizations, international collaborations, and then in the case of economic hardship around the world, recessions, for instance, they could also be part of the global effort rather than just left alone because no one has any interest in them. Um, and so, from a host country perspective, this international integration is, in my opinion, is one of the biggest um, you know, reasons why they would want, especially more economically greater countries, to invest in their country. So this is basically one, the main reasons why we want, as a host country, we want the foreign direct investment in our country. And what I'll do is on Wednesday, I'll talk about why they don't want it, and then from a corporation perspective, why do they want it, and then why don't they want it, and then we'll go through all these. And we already discussed about how is foreign direct investment is done, what are the vehicles of this, and specific types of foreign direct investment as such. So again, thank you so much for working with me. I really do appreciate it. I hope to see you guys soon, and um, let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so much. Bye for now.